Hey there, my name is Chris Acton with Acting Creative, and this is a Handwoven Experience, episode 123. And in this episode, I'm presenting Weaving Floats Q&A. So let's start with the basics. What is a weaving float? A weaving float is when a warp or a weft yarn jumps over multiples. So let's talk about how this happens. This can happen either unintentionally or intentionally. So let's start with the accidental one. There are times when you are weaving and you're sending your shuttle back and forth, happy as you please. But somewhere along the way, your shed space, which is the separation of your warp yarns, wasn't quite clean, right? Maybe your yarn was sticky. Something happened so that when your shuttle went through it, it didn't quite go through the yarns, over and under the yarns it was supposed to. Either that, or there are also times when your shuttle maybe has a mind of its own and it ducks into your warp yarns and keeps going. And what's crazy about this kind of weaving float is you don't always know it's happening until the project is finished and you look at the back and you see these little jumps that your yarn made. So that's the unintentional kind of weaving float. There's also the intentional weaving float, which happens with many, many weaving patterns. Even if something as simple as a twill, you will have lots of floats. So let me show you a visual here so you get an idea. One of my favorite patterns that relies on floats is waffle weave. So look at my waffle weave right here. Now, in this example, I have floats in the weft. See these are my floats right there. See that little guy? And I have floats in the warp. Those are my warp yarns. See the little? So you can see how the yarns jump over multiple other yarns, right? These are my floats. Now, thank goodness we have these floats because waffle weave is magical. When it goes to the washer and dryer, it all puckers up and you get these waffles, which is incredible. So that's a good thing that we have floats in the pattern, just like that. Which leads me to my next question. Are weaving floats bad? Nope, not at all. Now, as you heard, as you're making unintentional floats, there are times when it adds a little bit of interest to your fabric and you may be thinking, oh, I have to go fix those. I wouldn't even worry about it, my friend. You are learning, you're trying new things. An occasional float, that just shows that it's handmade. That's a good thing. And certainly, if you are creating some kind of gorgeous pattern, using a variety of floats, that is all good. That's part of what makes the pattern really charming and interesting. So let's talk about what to consider when it comes to weaving floats. So one of the first things to consider is the purpose of your fabric. So here's my example here. This is a honeycomb, which is fabulous, right? Look at this, lovely. I've got some floats happening here, but look at the back. The back is crazy. Look at these. I can put my whole little finger through there. Those are some long floats on the back, right? So these are not a bad thing. You just have to consider, what do you want to use the fabric for? Because if you want to use this, say, for a pillow, no problem. Just make sure this is the side that is front facing and the floats are hidden so they're not going to snag anything. Yeah, right? No sweat. But isn't that interesting how the front of the fabric has some small floats, but nothing like the back. The back has these really interesting, boy, those suckers are like 1 inch wide, aren't they? Isn't that cool? So you just have to consider what you want to use the fabric for. It's not a bad thing at all, I promise. Here's my other example for you, is to kind of keep in mind scale of the pattern. Now, this was an overshot pattern that I did, which is lovely. I love some overshot. Here's what I didn't take into account was the scale of the repeats of the size of the pattern. So again, look at this. I end up with crazy floats. Look how long those are. Isn't that fun? So ultimately, it's not a problem that I have these wild floats. It gives it this really interesting look to the fabric. It's just a matter of if this fabric is appropriate for what I wanted it to do. And in this case, this was just going to be kind of a fall runner to lay beautifully on my table with a vase and some flowers. Great. Those floats, not going to hurt anything. However, if you wanted this to be fabric for, say, some kind of a little shawl or a wrap or something where it might get caught in other clothing or earrings or whatever it was, that's when you have to kind of think about the scale of the floats. And an easy way to do that is to simply kind of review the draft. There's some great weaving draft programs out there that will show you how big your floats will be. So when you pair that with the spacing of your project, you can do a little analysis and decide if that's going to be the result that you want for your project. So to wrap it all up, weaving floats are great. They're very fun and they create some amazing results in our projects. But on occasion they come up unintentionally too. And, you know, I think it just adds more interest. Personally, I think it just makes it all that much more exciting. So don't be afraid of some floats. Embrace the floats. That's what I recommend, my friend. Let me know your experience with weaving floats and how they have made your world much more exciting. All right, you guys. I hope that you enjoyed that and that you have a wonderful week. And of course, happy weaving.